Hey there, it's been a while since I did a video. I just want to do a quick little thing on like lessons learned from building the shed and the gazebo, things that were like maybe not so obvious or not so easily found on the internet. So we'll just jump right into it. The first one is concrete and wood they should never touch. And the reason why is because concrete wicks moisture up into the wood, which will cause the wood to rot faster. So you typically, or you pretty much always want to have a piece of metal, either through like a post base or some sort of like structural hardware to separate the concrete and the wood. But if you're using something like a deck block where the wood just rests in the concrete, you probably want to use pressure treated wood, and you probably want to seal the wood before you put it down into the block. And you can also seal the concrete, and that might also help prevent the moisture from transferring into the wood. Another item that was a mistake I made was not always using the correct screws or nails for whatever task I'm doing. And most importantly, I would say within this category is like structural versus non-structural. So like you shouldn't be using deck screws to attach your joists together. Deck screws are non-structural, so that's an inappropriate use for them. There's also the topic of galvanized or non-galvanized. Another question is length. Usually, like if you're using nails, you almost always want the shank to like extend just a little bit past whatever you're like hammering through, as long as it's like something that's kind of thin. And then like when you use screws versus nails, so like screws when you want something like super rigid, no movement, versus nails something where like you can have a little bit of give, and you maybe need a little more durability. So this is a topic I would definitely recommend. Like when you're doing any part of the construction, you want to always be making sure you're using the exact right hardware for whatever phase you're in. Like whether it's like assembling the joists or putting on the subfloor or nailing the framing together or whatever it is. Like always double check, triple check that you're using the correct screws and nails for whatever task you're doing. Another item, this is kind of easy, but just like something that helped me, like, because I build a lot of stuff by myself. So sheathing, when I'm doing the sheathing, I can prop it up using a nail. So like if I drive a nail into the bottom of this frame here, then I can prop the sheathing up against, and then I can put all my nails to, or screws or nails or whatever, to hold the sheathing in place. And then when I do the next layer up, I'll add a couple more nails just above that, and that's also going to give me a nice little gap for expansion and contraction of that sheet, like when it's summer versus winter or whatnot, right? So always use like a nail spacing between, and then you can also use those nails to prop up the sheathing to help you kind of build solo. Another item, this is something I messed up on my subfloor. I didn't really put all the right blocking in place where I needed it. So like, let's say this is the joist that I'm putting the subfloor on. So if I was to lay down this sheathing right here, I would want some sort of support at least under every other one of these, the edge of this frame. And how we do that is, we would basically measure where that edge goes to. I'd snap a chalk line right at that point, and then half of my blocking needs to go above that line and half of it needs to go below, so that I can support, the board that's above and the board that's below on that edge. That's just going to really help make the floor not squeak and just be more stable. Another mistake I made, I put cap nails too close to my windows when I was doing when I was wrapping the building with the weather resistant barrier. Like when you wrap the barrier, you think, oh, I want to get close to the window to hold the wrap in place right where it needs to be. The problem is when you go and you put the window, then when you do the install of the window, you're going to have cap nails that are in the way of the frame, because the window frame extends beyond the hole that you cut, because there's like a water barrier essentially. So make sure you stay like 6 inches in all directions away from doors and windows. Like don't place any cap nails there when you're installing your barrier, so that you have a nice fit with your door and window frame. Also on doors and windows, one thing I made a mistake when I framed my my shed. I went a little bigger on the recommended spacing. Instead of doing like a 1/4 inch, I did like a 1/2 inch. So I did an extra inch, wide, and I think I actually did an extra inch as well on the top. And the gap was so big that it was so hard. Like you're not really shimming anymore. Like you have to like put some pretty substantial wood in there to hold it in place. And if you go too small, then if you put it in and it's not quite square, there's no way to correct it, right? So try to make sure you shoot for a 1/4 inch in all directions for spacing, with the exception of like the bottom of the door frame, so that yeah, you could just get it in there and shim it appropriately and not have too big of a gap or too little. This is a really silly one. I had no idea there were like these little vents that came on the windows, and I had no idea what they were or what they were for. And I actually ended up installing one of my windows wrong. I put the vents up. Those are called weep holes, and it's so that when water gets in, it has a way to escape, because you have like a track where the window slides back and forth. So there's like a track for the window for the water to get caught. You need to install your weep holes down. If you put them up, they'll always be open, and you're not going to be draining. You're just going to be basically allowing water in. So weep holes go down. I messed up my roof and rafter spacing. I did a little bit more than 2 feet between my spacing. And then I got really scared when I started thinking about putting sheathing up, because I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm willing to walk on that, because I didn't think there was enough spacing. So then I ended up doing less than 16 inch. Just do 16 inches. They say you could do 2 feet as well. 2 feet is fine. But like if you're going to be up there and working on it, like I needed 16 inches for me to really feel comfortable to go up there and say like, okay, yeah, this is structurally sound. And then also I had the option to do the vent on the top, when I went and bought my metal roofing, and I didn't really know or understand, like how that works. So I was like, no, let me just do it like old school normal. Well, it's really simple. You just end your sheathing a little bit shorter than the top so that you basically have an air gap. And then when you install your cap on the top, there's basically going to be like a foam strip that goes on the sides, and that just allows the air to escape. Like this is a way better option than trying to install like roof vents after, like on the walls, on the gables and stuff like that. Like just go ahead and sheathe a few inches shorter and make sure that your cap rail fits on top of it, and then you have a really easy way to vent. But yeah, just think about your rafter spacing. I like 16 inches, but 2 feet also seems to be pretty normal, and don't really deviate from that. This is something that took me a couple days to figure out, was rafter angles, and I'd looked up a bunch of videos, and a million people have a different ways of doing it. The way that clicked for me, that I figured out on my own after the fact, was I was always trying to measure from the top of the gable beam to the edge of the wall, but that doesn't really make sense because you're not really using that dimension in any way on the lumber. What really clicked for me was when I started thinking about measuring from the bottom of the roof rafter over to the point that touches the inside edge. And when you do that, because that's like an exact point on the piece of wood, you could just run your basic, a squared plus b squared equals c squared to get the right length. And then you can also run, your sine, cosine, tangent math to get the x and y angles so that you know what the angles for the cuts are. And once I did that, that made my life a lot easier. Just make sure when you're measuring that y dimension, like the vertical here, you're not going to the top. You're going to wherever the bottom of your wood is going to land on the gable beam. So that was that really sped up my ability to do the rafter math, and got me really, really close where I was able to make a template and cut rafters pretty easy. Another thing, if you're solo framing, realize that you as a human being have physical limitations on what you can lift. And I figured out for me, I can't really lift anything more than a 10-foot wide wall. So if I'm framing something bigger than 10 feet in the future, I'm going to have to do it in sections and then connect those sections after the fact. But this was a big mistake I made with my shed. I was gonna do a lean-to instead of a gable, and one of my walls was like 14 or 15 feet tall, and it was just way too heavy, and I couldn't lift it, so I had to cut it down and redo my wall because of it. So, just be aware that you as a human being have restrictions for lifting, and unless you have like a bunch of friends in your neighborhood to come and help you, then keep your framing in a manageable size. Another thing I had, so I bought a kit for my gazebo, and for what I spent, I could have gotten a way better quality product if I just built it myself, just like from scratch, from just materials from the hardware and lumber store. So I would suggest in the future, if you have the skills to build anything, like don't buy a kit. It wasn't worth it for me. The kit I bought and built 6 months have gone by and it's already damaged, and like now I have to figure out ways how to repair it. And I don't know, for the price I could have just done it myself and it would have been better. So that's just my suggestion. Don't do kits. This is gonna be the last. Oh no, I'm sorry. There's one after this, but this was a really important one. I didn't realize how quick a wood building can get mildew. I had built my shed in like I want to say a couple months, and within the month after building it, it was already like mildew all over the place because the humidity and the moisture was like so high. So a little suggestion: if you live in a like high humidity, high rain area, I would suggest you stain anything that's not pressure treated before you build. So like cut stain and then build. I'm sorry, stain is maybe the wrong word. Seal is probably a better word. Seal anything any sort of wood that you have that's not pressure treated. And then just another way to combat mildew is to just make sure you have good circulation and good light. That's going to help. And let things dry out before you continue construction if they get wet. And now this is actually the last one. When I was working on my roof, I almost fell off several times, and it was like really dangerous. And it's because obviously the pitch is going to be whatever it is, but if you have the choice to make an easier pitch, do it. If it doesn't affect anything structurally or like storm wise or anything like that, just because it's going to be easier and safer and better to get on your roof. But also, I looked up time of day is really important. So I tried to do some work on my roof in the morning when when obviously it's a little more humid and the sun hasn't come up and dried everything. So if you're going to work on your roof, I suggest doing it in the afternoon when it's very hot, which seems like a little frustrating because you're out there getting cooked in the sun, but the traction on your feet is going to be a lot better. And then I was using like work boots that kind of had like a hard rubber grip. That was a bad idea. You're much better off with like tennis shoes or baseball shoes, or I'm sorry, tennis shoes that have like a very soft grip, so that you have something to grab onto and have some traction. So just a tip for working on the roof, if you can lower your pitch, work in the hottest part of the day, and wear something with a good grip. And that's it. Ciao. Thanks for watching.